Lydia slid the manila envelope across the oak kitchen table, the same table I'd refinished back when her agency landed its first big client, and said, calm as a bank teller, "I want out. 26 years of marriage, and she wouldn't look me in the eye. Her blazer, the one she saves for presentations, the one that makes everyone in the room nod along, was too sharp, too clean. I knew that look. She was already done with me. Sitting beside her was Foster, her lawyer, a thin guy with a tie clip the size of my thumbnail. He smelled like cologne and something metallic, like a dentist's office. He never smiled. Lydia kept it businesslike. "We've grown apart," she said. "I've found someone who fits the life I'm building." She even threw in a, "This is healthier for everyone." But none of that was meant for me. It was for the record. I didn't make a scene, didn't beg. I'd seen men do that, and it only gave the other side more leverage. I skimmed the settlement. The house went to her. I had 60 days, and an amount that wouldn't even cover the espresso machine in her office lobby. No stake in the company I helped build. "You'll be happier, Derek," she said, like she was doing me a favor. I signed the acknowledgement page, hearing the pen scratch louder than I expected. Foster gathered the papers, already moving on to his next appointment. Lydia looked at me then. Just for a second, I caught a flicker of something like pity. It felt worse than anger. I didn't say anything. After they left, I poured coffee and sat in the quiet of our kitchen. The silence pressed down on me, like the weight of 26 years evaporating. I remembered the first year, the rented office, the pizza on the floor, and Lydia laughing. It felt like another lifetime. I told myself to breathe. I'd seen enough small humiliations over the last 5 years to know this wasn't sudden. This wasn't a breakup. This was the final tap on a wall that already had cracks. I'm 57. Men my age don't get do-overs without a plan, and I had one. I'd been building it, slow and quiet, piece by piece, since the afternoon I found the receipt that told me who she really was. It started with laundry, my job on Saturdays because her Sundays were for events and prep. That week, I pulled a crisp blazer from the pile and found a folded slip in the pocket. Bayview Suites, room service for 2, sparkling wine, strawberries, late checkout. The date was our wedding anniversary. That night, I ate meatloaf alone and watched a replay of a ball game. She texted, "Bored dinner ran over, don't wait up." I stared at the TV, felt stupid for believing it was just work. She didn't come home until late, and when she did, there was no mention of the slip, no explanation, just the same old routine. A week later, Lydia ran Horizon Praxis, a healthcare marketing shop that had taken off when she landed that hospital system in Dayton. I'd been there from the start, taking contracting jobs and nighttime deliveries to keep us afloat. I wrote her first proposals at our kitchen desk. Back then, it was we. Somewhere around year 19, it became she. Strategy meetings moved off the calendar. She started locking her office at home with a keypad. "Client privacy," she said. Her mother, Marla, would make those comments at holiday dinners. "A man should provide more," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'd smile, cut the ham. Lydia never corrected her. There were dinners I wasn't invited to, trips that didn't include spouses. Then came the gym trainer with the immaculate beard. She started talking about him more, how he pushes me. The worst part was the phone. She'd flip it face down when she set it on the counter, laugh at texts after midnight. If I asked who it was, she'd tell me I was being insecure. Eventually, I stopped asking. But the receipt, that was the moment I couldn't ignore it anymore. The Bayview slip wasn't just about some hotel night. It was the truth about her. She was careful about hurting her brand, cautious about optics. But she didn't give a damn about me. I replaced the receipt back where I found it, tucked it into her blazer pocket like nothing had changed. But I started paying attention. The mileage logs, vendor invoices, the little gaps between what she said and what I started seeing. The way she'd ask me to look the other way when questions about her business came up. The excuses. I wasn't just a husband being replaced. I was a liability, one she was planning to cut loose. The thought stung, but it wasn't a surprise. It's like finding a crack in a wall that had been there for years, but you only just noticed. The pieces had been building up, adding weight to something I'd been ignoring. I wasn't ready to fight back yet, but I couldn't deny it anymore. The woman I married had already left the building. The question now was, when would I? So I kept my eyes open. The Bayview receipt was just the beginning. There was more to uncover, and when the time came, I'd be ready. The next morning, I made a new email at the library across town. I used my old name, Derek H. Carpenter, because Lydia had insisted years ago on linking all our devices for security. I didn't trust any of it. I wasn't looking for an excuse to get caught, but I wasn't stupid enough to think I could just go back to ignoring the signs either. I started small, picking up what came through the house by accident. Courier labels, expense sheets left in the printer, sticky notes stuck to the bottom of boxes. Every scrap had a story. I found Horizon Praxis had shell entities I'd never heard of. Redwood Atlas, Bluefinch Logistics. They weren't vendors, they were funnels. Money went in and vanished. I knew what it meant. I bought a burner flip phone at a gas station on the Pike. $29, cash, old school, but safe. I took pictures of the invoices, of dates, of every little piece of evidence I could gather. I kept it all in a notebook under the spare tire in my truck. Every detail was important, even if I didn't understand it yet. A few weeks later, on a rainy Wednesday, I drove 60 miles to meet an old buddy, Ralph Kim. He does forensic auditing for a regional bank. We hadn't grabbed a beer in 8 years. He looked older, so did I. I didn't mention Lydia's name, didn't say anything specific. I kept it vague, like it wasn't really about me. Suppose an agency bills hospital systems and launders a cut through fake vendors, I said, just to get him talking. Suppose the principal hides it with inflated ad buys and comped influencer events. Ralph didn't blink. He'd heard worse. He told me what matters: patterns, timings, who signs the authorizations, and where the pension money sits. That's the golden ticket, D, he said. You'll find it, but don't go poking around in places you shouldn't. He gave me advice I could use. Document what crosses your kitchen, what's public, and what's handed to you. Keep it clean. The next few weeks, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Employee retirement chatter on Horizon social posts, photos at parties, a banner about best-in-class matching. I dug out our old plan brochures. The numbers looked generous, too generous for the balance sheets I'd glimpsed. The gym guy? His name popped up on a charge to her, Amex. Noel Fitness Collective. I Googled it at the library. Noel Carver, 30 years old, ex-trainer turned wellness strategist. I saw pictures of her with Lydia at industry mixers. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Next, I called my old union steward from when I did electrical work. I just wanted to ask about whistleblower channels. He gave me a number for a state investigator who likes clean packets. I got to work on those packets, vendor lists. A speakers series invoice that matched a wine bar receipt, split across 2 entities. A screenshot of a Shopify store Lydia set up through a cousin's LLC, taking client reimbursements for things that never shipped. I started recording conversations when she brushed me off about taxes. "Don't worry about it, Derek," she'd say. "You know this isn't your area." I didn't like hearing it, but I kept the recording. My thumb shook when I saved it. I sat down with a retired attorney who used to teach my night class business law. He gave me a crash course on innocent spouse relief and what the IRS cares about: timelines, knowledge, willful blindness. I wrote down every word he said. After a month of this, I wasn't angry anymore. I was steady. I'd learned how Lydia had built something slick and impressive, but I also saw how it was built on numbers that wouldn't survive daylight. I decided I'd expose it the same way I'd fixed busted cabinets: measure twice, cut once, no splinters. I drove 22 miles to a copy shop, paid cash, and printed the packets. My hands felt steady as I sealed each envelope, but the paper cut on my thumb stung more than I expected. I didn't mind. I was used to the sting of things I couldn't undo. I sent one to the IRS whistleblower office with a summary of $24.7 million in manipulated billings and fraudulent deductions across 9 tax years. I sent copies to the state AG's office and the Department of Labor for pension violations. Not long after, I filed for innocent spouse relief from a borrowed laptop at a co-working space. The place smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink, like 100 different lives intersecting in one sterile room. Nobody knew my name there. I included a neat timeline, every date I could verify. Lydia texted me a smiley face and a Thank you for being reasonable. I put the phone face down on the counter. Sometimes a man needs silence to keep his hands steady. I sat at Lenny's diner at 8:05 a.m., corner booth, coffee black, watching Horizon's glass lobby across the street. I knew her schedule. She'd walk in at 8:20, the staff meeting at 8:30, bad muffins on a silver tray. Nothing had changed. At 9:11, 2 unmarked sedans slid to the curb. A third followed. Suits stepped out. Not flashy, just the kind who carry banker's boxes and move like they know exactly where they're going. Building security got jumpy. A manager in a tight dress tried to stall them at the desk. One agent flashed a paper. The manager moved. My phone lit up at 9:19 with Lydia's name. I let it ring. Then came 3 more calls in a row. I drank my coffee. My hand didn't shake. I kept my head down, eyes fixed on the window. From the booth, I could see Lydia step off the elevator at 9:26, pacing, talking, pointing at the agents. Ralph had told me what to expect. Mirrored drives, file cabinets sealed, personnel split off for interviews in conference rooms. People cry, someone gets brave, someone throws someone under the bus. The lobby lights reflected off the marble floor and the agent's shoes, sharp and purposeful. Lydia's assistant, Alyssa, I think, held a tissue to her lip, eyes darting around like she was waiting for the storm to hit. My phone buzzed again, a text from Lydia. Emergency. They're asking about household accounts. Call me now. Then another. If our assets freeze, you'll suffer too. Then, Derek, please. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to play her game anymore. I answered the 4th call. Lydia's voice came through tinny and hard. Did you do this? I didn't flinch. I'm meeting someone at 10. It wasn't a lie. At 10:03, I walked 6 blocks to the federal building, checked in with Special Agent Morales. He had the kind of calm that makes you tell the truth without realizing it. He thanked me for the packet, asked me to walk him through the timeline. I did, clear and tight. He recorded my statement, but didn't pat me on the back. Didn't promise anything, just kept the questions focused. When I left, there were 12 missed calls and 1 voicemail from Marla. What have you done to my daughter? I deleted it without listening. I didn't need to hear her. I drove to the river and sat in the truck for a while, watching the water move, letting the silence settle over me. I'm not proud of it, but I smiled. 2 days later, Morales called me back in. This time, he had Agent Chen from the SEC with him, and an assistant U.S. attorney named Porter, who looked like he hadn't slept in 2 nights. Chen slid a folder toward me. We believe your wife's operations included diverting approximately $3.9 million from the employee retirement plan into a liquid entity she controls. It hit me in my throat. I'd always known Lydia had a knack for business, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Guys from the bullpen at Horizon, designers, project managers, the ones who came to our cookouts and trusted her. That money was their future, their retirement, and she'd taken it. Porter spoke next, calm but direct. We also have communications between Ms. Holt and a Noel C., directing adjustments to vendor ledgers to mask personal expenses as client reimbursements. I didn't need to hear anything else. Noel wasn't just an affair. She was logistics. Her wellness workshops were nothing more than coded market activations. A down payment on her loft appeared the same week a hospital sponsorship got recorded. I stared at the spreadsheet photo, the numbers blurring in my vision. Anger built up inside me, but it was the kind of anger that made you quiet, made you cold. Chen spoke again, his voice steady. We'll support your innocent spouse claim if your timeline checks out. Morales added, keep your communications minimal. Don't engage with her about this. Let counsel handle any necessary contact. I nodded, trying to let the weight of it sink in. But it was all business now. No time for the emotional wreckage. On my way home, Lydia called again. I answered. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. They're saying pension theft, Derek, she said, voice cracking. They took my passport. I leaned against the wheel, watching cars zip by. You told me you were matching 10%, I said. I asked you how you could afford that. You said not to worry. Silence. Then, if you help me now... I didn't let her finish. Goodbye, Lydia. I hung up, the finality of it settling in my chest. I parked in a grocery store lot, watching people load their cars with bread, milk, like it was any other Wednesday. They were going about their business. I was going about mine. That night, I packed a duffel and moved into a furnished month-to-month apartment off 4th Street. The place smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. I didn't care. I slept better than I had in years. The asset freeze hit within a week. My attorney arranged an emergency allowance, just enough to cover rent, food, and gas. I sold my vintage drill press for cash. Didn't look back. Everything else I could live without. I packed up photos, my father's tools, my high school letter jacket that no longer fit. I left the wall art Lydia had picked to impress clients. I didn't want anything in my new life that had been hers. Mornings I walked to a coffee shop and made lists. They were basic. Things to do, things to find, people to talk to. Afternoons I scoured job boards, called old contacts. I hadn't needed a resume in 2 decades. It felt like learning to write with my left hand, awkward and slow. But I kept at it. On a Thursday, I dialed Martin Ortega, a partner at a compliance shop I'd subcontracted for years ago. He remembered me. He also read the news. "You free for lunch?" he asked. We met at a small diner, and I laid out my skills, vendor vetting, how fake invoices get dressed up, where marketing budgets hide waste. He didn't say much, just listened, nodding along like I was speaking his language. When I finished, he looked at me like a mechanic who just found the right wrench. "We're building a fraud risk unit," he said. "We need someone who speaks normal and spots nonsense." 2 interviews later, I had a badge, an email address, and a chair that didn't wobble. The first week, a junior analyst brought me a set of event activations that smelled wrong, fake receipts, marked up numbers. I showed her where to look, what questions to ask, and who would lie when. She was surprised. "No one ever explained it like that," she said. Evenings I drove to the river, sat on the tailgate, and made notes for an idea called Fix Your Books, a workshop for small shops that can't afford compliance teams. It wasn't fancy, just clear. A few lessons on spotting the kind of things I'd seen for years. Marla left a voicemail. "Family is forever." Troy texted me, "You're ruining her life." I didn't respond to either. Lydia's arraignment was set for a Monday. My lawyer said I didn't need to go. I went anyway. Some doors you have to see close with your own eyes. The courthouse smelled like marble and paper. I wore a plain navy jacket and no tie. I sat in the back row, next to a guy who kept rubbing his hands like he had cold knuckles. Lydia walked in with Foster. Her hair was perfect, but the rest was off. The suit didn't fit right. The confidence wasn't there. The charges were read in a voice that didn't care. Wire fraud, tax evasion, ERISA violations. Lydia said, "Not guilty," like it might make the words go back in the box. The judge denied her travel and set tight conditions. Foster whispered something, and Lydia nodded, but I knew she wasn't really listening. When they let her out, she glanced back at me, just for half a second. It wasn't a question. It was a ledger balancing out. Outside, the air felt different, like it had weight. I walked 2 blocks and bought a burger from a cart, ate it on a bench, no napkin, grease on my fingers. I hadn't enjoyed food like that in years. The simplicity of it, the normalcy, settled something deep inside. 2 months later, my innocent spouse letter arrived. Formal language, all legal jargon, saying I'd done what a reasonable person would do once I knew. I put it in a drawer with my father's watch. I didn't need to keep it out, not like a trophy. But I wasn't throwing it away either. Work picked up. I ran a training for a group of shop owners at a library on 9th Avenue. 15 folks on folding chairs, some younger, some older. I showed them how to read a vendor list like a map, not a brochure, how to spot the hidden fees, the red flags, the things that don't add up. After the session, a woman in her 60s came up to me. She had lines around her eyes from years of worry. "My son nearly lost his business because he trusted the wrong partner. Thank you," she said. I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, something settled in me. Something that had been rattling for months, maybe years. It wasn't about the money or Lydia or any of that. It was about doing something real, something that mattered. I was starting to rebuild, one small piece at a time. Lydia took a plea after 6 months, reduced counts in exchange for cooperation. Noelle cut a deal too. They both wrote long statements about pressures, expectations, and the weight of the decisions they had made. I didn't read them. The whistleblower award letter came folded into a thick packet. 18% of recovered funds tied to my disclosures, estimated at a little over $3.1 million. I stared at the number. Set the letter down, made coffee, didn't buy a boat, didn't move to Florida. I paid off my truck, helped 2 employees from Horizon who'd had their retirements dented, quiet checks, no notes, and put the rest into a fund that backs small shops who want clean books from day one. I rented a 9th-floor corner apartment with chipped baseboards and a view of the river that everyone else ignores. It was a small space, but it was mine. I furnished it with a sturdy table from a salvage yard and a couch that didn't try to impress anyone. No frills, no show, just something that fit. I started a Friday breakfast for men who'd been chewed up by business divorces. No speeches, no tears. Just coffee, egg sandwiches, and a whiteboard where we wrote 3 things: where you're at, what you need, what you can give. We call it shop talk. One morning, Alyssa, the former assistant, found me after a session. "They restored most of the pension," she said. "Folks know you helped." I said, "Good," and that was enough. I didn't need anything more. Marla sent a short letter through my attorney. "I was wrong about you." I put it in the same drawer as the watch and the innocent spouse letter. Some things you don't throw away, but you don't frame them either. On the 1-year mark from the day she slid the envelope across the table, I made pancakes on a cheap skillet, opened the window, and let the river air in. I thought about all that had happened, how it had unfolded, how I had acted. Looking back, I should have known sooner. But I did act. I didn't raise my voice. I documented, I reported, and I moved forward without turning into a bitter version of myself. That's the best revenge I know. Not fireworks, not speeches, just a man taking back his time, his craft, and his name, while the people who underestimated him learn quietly and for a long time what a clean ledger really costs.